Hey folks, Billy Sullivan here. Welcome to Billy's Guitars video number 22. And this week's guitar is the Gibson Les Paul Jr. And it's this finish, they call it Pelham Blue. It's spelled with a P, but I think they kind of pronounce it with an F. I don't know. But I always thought this was a cool finish. And, Les Paul Jr.'s have been around from the very beginning. I think when Gibson introduced the Les Paul Jr., it was intended to be a lower budget Les Paul. Because basically there's no binding like on a regular Les Paul. It's one pickup instead of two or three. But there's people in rock and roll music that made the Les Paul Jr. really speak, and Leslie West was one of them. I believe it was something like that. But Leslie West played a Gibson Les Paul Jr. I know there's a bunch of other people that's played them too. Like in modern day, Lucas Nelson, Willie Nelson's son, plays one of the Sunburst ones. That's a Les Paul Jr. I'd like to get sometime, the actual older Sunburst one. But this particular one was made in 2011. I was about a year in living in Chicago at this point. My first year that I moved there was 2010. And that year, I really didn't play much around Chicago other than with the Hermits. Because I was basically either on the road with Peter or I was going back to Cleveland, still playing around there because I had nothing lined up in Chicago at that point. But when it got to the 2011, I was starting to play out acoustically, and even I needed to get a smaller guitar amp, and that was basically the reason why I was there. I was looking at getting a smaller Fender amp just to play in the clubs. Because at that point, I just had a couple the big Voxes with the 412 cabinets. And I wanted to slim down, scale down. I also had a couple single 12 cabinets that I used with the Vox head. But I was in Guitar Center, the one in Naperville, because I lived right down the street from it. And I saw this hanging on the wall in the back room. They had a back, they probably still have that room there to this day, and this was hanging on the wall, and this color just kind of spoke to me. See how it is in the light? It's really cool. So the salesman, his name was Gil Peeney. A lot of you Chicago musicians know who Gil is, and even probably some people around the country in Cleveland. Gil was one of the two lead guitar players in an Illinois band called the Boys of Illinois. And I saw them in Cleveland. They played the Cleveland Agora. I was a kid, and I saw the boys from Illinois, and of course I liked them. And I went out and bought their record the next day. And fast forward to 2011, and this really nice gentleman that was working the store, he said, "Hey, you want to try it?" So he let me take it off the wall and plugged it in, and then we started talking, and he asked me where I'm. I told him I was originally from Cleveland, so that really struck up his antenna, because the boys from Illinois, they were I believe they were managed by Steve Popovich, that had Cleveland International Records. So they spend a lot of time in Cleveland, and he knows all about Cleveland. And once he told me his name and I got a good look at him, I was like, "Yeah, I remember you. I saw you at the Agora in 1978. Or 79, early 79 or something like that," because I used to use my brother Terry's birth certificate to get in. Don't tell. But it was really cool, and we struck up a friendship, and he was there for a few more years after that, but he's the one that sold me this guitar. And like other guitars, I know, I probably devalued the guitar, but I don't look at it that way. I look at how it's going to work for me. So I took it to Cleveland, and my friend Kurt Wright, he suggested I put this wraparound bridge that has basically the saddles that you can adjust the intonation individually. So we did that, but if you notice, the posts on there are gold instead of silver. He couldn't find silver posts to accommodate this bridge, so he had gold ones there, and they worked. They said, "Hey, I don't care. If it works, it works." So that's why. And the only other thing is, this is probably where I really devalued the guitar. I put these Spurzel locking tuners on, which requires a little bit of drilling and stuff. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it really helped the tuning at all. But nevertheless, that's what I did. And I used this guitar when I got it. I used it quite a bit. I even used it on a couple Hermit shows where I was driving. And again, like the last video, it's Gibson guitars with the headstock like that. I won't take it on the plane. Unless it's got that case to where it supports the neck, which I do have. But I used it back in 2011, 12, between that and 2015 when I played with Paul Pope. There's some clips online of me playing with him, me using this guitar. And it's cool. It's just a single pickup. It's got a P90 pickup. It's the original one. I didn't change any of that. And it's got the dog ear covers. So electronically speaking, this guitar basically is original. The only thing, and I have quite a bit of Gibson guitars that were made around this time frame. I don't know if you can hear this. Let's see if it'll do it. Let's see. You hear that? Actually, it subsided over the years, but when I first got it, it was terrible. It's static, and the reason where the static is coming from, it's from the lacquer. For some reason, newer Gibson guitars are doing that, and I don't know why. It's frustrating. I think what I did, I put a dryer sheet in here, and it seemed to help. Yeah, but I've had this guitar since 2011, so it's subsided a bit. It's not as bad. You hear a little bit there. I have other Gibson guitars where it's worse, so that's a Gibson flaw. But still, it's not a deal breaker for me. I can get around that. So it's basically got that P90 pickup sound just in one easy package. There's a volume and tone control. And it's basically in your face a rock and roll guitar. See, it's out of tune there just slightly. See, I'm not sure if these locking tuners really did it justice. Maybe I might put the original ones back on. Hear that? But then again, this guitar's been sitting for a while, so I haven't played it. When I played it live, it stayed in tune pretty well. But anyways, this is the reissued Gibson Les Paul Jr. in the Vellum Blue, 2011. Sold to me by Gil Pini from the boys from Illinois.